journalist and author Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Mm.
He says that he cannot have apolitical friendships in his life.
I don't really have, at this point in my life, apolitical friendships.
Mm.
And some might say that that is impoverishing, but I don't think it is. I think it's deeply enriching, actually. Yeah, I was trying to think. I have people who I talk about politics more than others, but I don't have deep friends or even friends who maybe secretly think Trump is great.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't have. There are people who think you should have that, and I'm not one of them.
I don't know. I think that it's not so much with my friends, because obviously you choose your friends, but the relationships I don't choose pull me into proximity with people who
Yes.
think very, very differently from me.
Well, yeah, of course I have that.
Mm.
I have that, but they're not people who I would call comrade at all, or even friend.
That's interesting. What do you think
It
about
is.
that, Alan?
I think that's a luxury for him. I mean, that's who he is in that space. I think there's a spectrum where everybody can have a different way they interact with anyone. One of the political theories, and I can't exactly expound the name of it right now, but one of the problems in one of the political theories is this sort of tribalism that each group hates the other group so much that they can never ever be the sort of middle anymore. It's either apples or oranges always. And that's what sort of made Trump be what Trump is, because he made, one people apples and they're oranges, and you just never do it the other way. So I can understand where he is. I think that, for people who work in policy, it's important to know what other people are thinking.
And you're saying that Ta-Nehisi Coates saying that is tribalism? Explain why you see that as tribalism.
I'm saying it's for him. I mean, because for him, it's either apple or oranges, right? He's deselecting everybody and saying this is the only space where I can exist. And I don't, as I said, it's not my theory necessarily, but it is a political theory about what's happening today, that people are either apples or oranges. And when you create that sort of division, then there's never going to be down the lane anymore, sort of this sort of bipartisan anything. It's either apple or an orange, and you each hate each other. So at some point, you're always going to have friction and fighting. And that they're saying that friction is what created Trumpism, because there were so many people who were excluded for whatever reason, right? You take all the people who were excluded you hated gay rights, you hated trans people, you hated whatever, everything about you is wrong, you're dumb, you're stupid, whatever. And those people sort of formed this group, and now they hate the other group. I'm saying that's a theory. For me, in my life, I don't get to do that dissection that he has. I don't have the luxury of going through my life and saying, okay, this person's a Republican, I can't work with them.
I don't think it's tribalism, and I don't think it's a matter of luxury. One could say maybe you have the luxury to be around people like this, meaning that you live a certain kind of life and world that maybe you're going to be exposed to folks like that. And not everyone has the luxury of treating oppression like a friendly debate club topic. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Some of us, care about where we invest our energy. So that isn't tribalism to me. That's just having standards. And so, I mean, I don't think
people who, right? I don't believe that at all. I don't believe. So, just because it's Holy Week and this is one of the expressions of holiness, of sort of evangelizing to people, your life is a moment to speak how people should live. And when you evangelize to people who don't think like you. So if you put yourself in that ego system, that bubble, then you're excluding yourself from a whole nother group of people who think something different than you. And it winds up exactly where we are right now, where that whole other group of people might win.
No,
and you're
I think having boundaries and standards, I don't think that's why we are where we are right now.
I think that's
Trump
is
a
broad statement. You can't say people who don't have standards can't have friends that don't agree with them.
No. Listen, if a gay person doesn't want to sip wine with someone who thinks they are an abomination, that's cool. That's okay. That isn't a matter of tribalism. It's protecting your peace. If you don't want to be around somebody, if you want to be around somebody who supports the guy that is being sued by the Central Park Five, or supports the guy that says Haitian immigrants are eating cats and dogs, or supports the guy that is peddled in racism, not even peddled in it, bathed in racism for decades, you don't got. I mean, that's like saying to black Southerners in the 1960s, well, your colleague over there supports George Wallace and Bull Connor. Be his friend.
I don't think that that's the case. Like I said before, there's a spectrum. Everybody doesn't have to get off the spectrum in the same place. People are allowed to be in that place on one level or on the other level, depending on where people are on the spectrum.
So I'm just pushing back on the idea that it's tribalism to say at this point in that black man's life that I don't have apolitical friendships or people who align with Trumpism. I don't believe it's tribalism. I think it's folks, and everybody should be able to do that. Again, gay folks, black folks. You don't need to have that in your life. And I also hold on. Let me finish. Let me finish. It's not a luxury. It's a luxury for maybe you to sit with those people, but for the average working class person, for the person who's working their ass off, living their life, they don't have to be around that. They don't have to be He said friendships. So you might have some friendships with like Jim Crow 2.0 people. I don't know. Maybe you do, Alan. But maybe you do.
I don't grant them that. I think you're doing an extreme.
Well, I don't know. But I'm saying that I don't think it's tribalism. Let me finish. I don't think it's tribalism to say, no, that's not what I want to do. And I think it's ridiculous to think that people should want to, like I said, have cheese and crackers with the people who are voting against them. I don't think that's tribalism, nor is it that's the reason why we are where we are today. We are where we are today is because this country has continued to make the cardinal sin over and over to not deal with the structural underpinnings of racism in this country. They're trying to erase history. They're trying to erase Harriet Tubman. There's reports of coming after the African American Museum. Mm-hmm. It's not because people don't want to sit down with folks who implicitly or explicitly don't like them. It's because the rich guys at the top have fed off of otherism and hatred. So for me, it isn't about your race or anything like that. It's, if this were the 1960s and I found out that you were supporting George Wallace, you couldn't be a friend of mine. That's not otherism. That's protection, because what else are you not supporting? What else are you aligning yourself with? I mean, you can't tell Jewish folks, well, you should be friends with a Holocaust denier. You know what I mean? No, I think we got to have standards, but go ahead.
So I think that your analogy is flawed in that I'm not requiring people to be friends with anyone, but I'm also not requiring other people to not be down with the movement just because they are friends with someone. You're excluding people from a group. And I don't know I'm trying to think of a state house where in reality, in politics, things that are affecting individuals that you can just decide, I'm not going to deal with this anymore, right? Because that's sort of
he was talking about friendships, Alan.
I know,
friendships.
Same thing. I mean, I don't know how you can make
friendships. The people you work with in politics is different.
Yeah,
He's talking about friendships.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't know how you get past two people with ideological differences based on the sociology, meaning where they were born and how they were sort of raised. To me, to have them a chance to, if you just sort of say, I'm not going to deal with you at all, right? I don't subscribe to that.
So you have Trump supporters who are your friends?
I do know people who voted for Trump who are my friends. Absolutely. Totally.
Oh.
Do I have dinner with them every day?
I guess I don't.
No.
I don't attract that. My spirit just don't attract it. I don't
know if it's about attracting it necessarily, but we might have preferences or similarities in things that we care about, like education of children, where I'm not dealing with that part of it. I'm dealing with the education of children or the rights of immigrants. So there are a lot of places where I think people, like I said before, in the religious perspective, there are a lot of places where people have religions that I don't agree with, that I wasn't sort of geared in or reared in, but I'm able to be friends with them, not because I have to say, your God doesn't exist or my God doesn't exist, because we're not talking about gods right now. We're talking about the things that we agree on.
Yeah, I think that's different than where we are today with MAGA and Trumpism. For me, I just think it's different than religious differences.
I think in New Jersey, you have the luxury to maybe think that. But if you lived in Tennessee...
Will you stop? Why do you keep saying the word luxury? You are the guy...
Because I think people miss it. Listen, someone who was in D.C. for so long, I will tell you, I had the luxury of everything in my life. I didn't have to struggle with anything anywhere.
We have to go to a break, but let me just say again, not everyone has the luxury of treating oppression like it's a friendly debate topic. Mm-hmm. So you keep saying me luxury. Maybe you should look at your own luxury,
No,
Mr. Allen Orr. You have the luxury
look,
to say, "Oh, it's just how you
I just
feel."
talked about luxury. I just talked about it.
It's just
I
how, but you're
literally
trying to
started that
make it
sentence with. I literally started the
as it's
sentence
some
with my
privilege
luxury.
thing.
I literally started the sentence with how DC sort of put you in this bubble where everybody was a lawyer, everybody had an education, everybody had this sort of basis
So
of
then
financial
it's
ability to
your
do things.
luxury. It's nobody else's luxury to say, "Yo, I'm not gonna." It's not me having the luxury to say, "I can't be cool with someone like that." That could be protecting your peace.
I don't let other people affect my peace, so that's a little bit different for me.
Well, and for some people, it's for Ta-Nehisi Coates, you being in my space and feel that kind of way, you're not going to be in my space like that. And I don't think that's tribalism. I think that's
If he only
protection.
talks to people who think the same thing he thinks, that's the definition
You
of
could
tribalism.
think differently and still not support that demon.
I'm saying I don't think that all Trump supporters are racist. That's not the topology that I live in. I do believe that Trump himself is racist. There are racist policies, but I don't believe all Republicans are racist. That's just I don't live in that world where I'm able to sort of do to them what they constantly do to us, where they say, "Oh, people believe this, but blah blah blah." So if you're saying because they support Trump, then they therefore are racist and therefore they can't be your friend, that's problematic. But if you're saying they're racist and they're your friend, and you know they're racist and your friend, that's a little bit different than what I'm saying. So I
Can I
think
ask you a
that
question? May I ask you a
sure,
question?
sure, of course,
You don't think all Trump supporters are racist, and we
I
have
do
to be
not.
careful with that language, all right?
Yeah.
But do you think that all Trump supporters supported racism with their vote?
So I guess in the policy world, the answer would be yes, they did. But
Yeah.
was it the only thing they were voting for? Because that's the exact same thing they say
I didn't say it
for.
was the only thing. I didn't say the only thing. I said
But I
if
think,
you believe Trump is a
the
racist.
typology of it is just. I think the typology of it is interesting because it's one of the tools that is used for Black people with the Democratic Party saying, "Well, if you support Democrats, you support
No, no,
gays,
no. That's a
lesbians."
false equivalency. Don't do
It's not
that.
a
That's a
false equivalency.
ridiculous
It
false
is the exact
equivalency.
same equivalency.
No, it's not the exact same
It is the
thing.
exact
That's
same
not the
equivalency.
exact same
The
thing.
exact same equivalency. You can see it's different in
That's
your mind,
not
and that's
that's no
fine.
how dare you compare Black Democratic voters to Trump supporters. I didn't even say Republican, mind you. I said
Yeah.
Trump supporters who continue to support this man who you yourself admit that this man is a racist. You're going to
Yeah.
compare that to Black folks who are having the discretion and being pragmatic when it comes to their vote. That is a
Absolutely.
false equivalency,
Absolutely.
Alan.
Because I was one of those Black people. I was one of those Black people at a time. I absolutely because
What do you
that's
mean?
experience that I can
Black
relate.
folks
That is
don't. You used
experience
to be a Republican.
that is a Christian experience as a Black person growing up that I
Black
could have
Democrats,
related to.
you
I
were
could have
Republican.
related to with people saying that you are not the judge of the conversation. For your experience, it is an equivalency for you. But in life, I just gave it to you and said it is an equivalency. So for me, it is. And that is the point of all of it. Each person experiences life differently, and there's a different.
Well, you're
so
also.
you don't have to agree to make it be that that's
It's
the
a
case.
false equivalency. You
Okay.
also think that $400,000 is middle class. So
Those things.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say, brother. To compare Black Democratic voters, I didn't say Black Obama voters
It doesn't
or
matter.
Black
It doesn't
Carter
matter.
voters
I understand your point.
to MAGAism, to Trump
Yeah.
supporters. But my ultimate point was, you don't say they're all racist, fine. But were they all supporting a racist with their vote? And if your vote is the most important thing, your vote is a powerful thing,
Mm.
then I just let the record show. If you don't want to say they're all racist, fine. But let's at least concede with their vote, they supported racism. I'm not saying it's the only thing they supported.
With their vote,
And now they're in the F around and find out era.
They supported losing their jobs. They supported all these horrible things that are happening. There is no
In the name
doubt
of
conversation.
racism, they like
There's
that
no-
otherism.
There's no doubt of conversation. So this is one of the things that I think is interesting, and I think this is a good conversation to have in these spaces because I don't think all people have to feel the same, right? That monolith thing about this issue is you can be against racism and not hate all people that voted for Donald Trump. In the way that I sort of talk about this in policy wise is I'm a Coke drinker. I only drink Coke. I don't like Pepsi at all, right? And in the concept, when I go to a store, I look for Coke. Somebody else might like Pepsi. And as long as when they go to the store, there's Pepsi, then there's no problem. The problem is when the Pepsi person says, we don't want Coke in the store anymore, right? That's the problem in the infraction. So I don't think that everybody who likes Pepsi is against Coke. I think they just like Pepsi.
I'm talking about.
I know it's the same.
I'm not talking about Coke and frickin' Pepsi. I'm not talking about sugar water here.
Mhm.
I'm talking about we are possibly at the end of having functioning elections.
Mhm.
I'm talking about the erasure of our history.
Mhm.
I'm talking about epic voter suppression laws.
Mhm.
I'm talking about journalists being targeted. I'm talking about people who wrote op-eds being snatched up off the street.
Mhm.
I'm not talking about Coke and Pepsi. And I'm talking about a man who told us exactly who he was. And people decided to dismiss that. Not
Mhm.
because of their eggs, not because of groceries or the price of
Mhm.
gas, because he tapped into some ugliness.
Mhm.
So I'm not talking about Coke and Pepsi. It isn't that simple. And I think, respectfully, to make it that simple downplays the horror of what's really going on. It's not a
Mhm.
matter of just a preference and an opinion. But you using that Coke and Pepsi analogy is the
Mhm.
normalizing of this foolishness. There is no analogy. There is no equivalency to
Mhm.
where we are in our lifetime right now. There is none. So I ask of you from my soul,
Mhm.
I beg of you, I implore you to not act like this is anything freaking normal. Have you ever heard of a person being deported to another country, the Supreme Court making a ruling, and then the president of that other country says it's preposterous to ask me if I'll send him back, and you're bringing up Coke and Pepsi?
Mhm.